This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joar.
Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joar, and today is Thursday, December 6, 2018. I'm here in Maui at the Qualcomm Snapdragon Summit with SuperSaf.
Hey, how you doing?
And Alex Katouzian of Qualcomm. What is your role there?
I'm the Senior VP and General Manager of our mobile and compute business.
Wonderful. Yeah. So, Alex, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for inviting me.
I thank you as well.
Thank you.
We want to spend a few minutes with you, Alex, to kind of go over some of the great news that came out of this event.
Sure.
You know, the three big announcements, 5G, all the things, is kind of how the first day summary went for me.
Right.
Snapdragon 855 announcement, which is going to really move the mobile world forward in next year.
Yes.
And then, of course, you're also doing in parallel the whole, always connected, always on PC by cranking things up a notch, giving Intel a run for their money there with the 8CX.
Yes.
So tell us in your own words, what do you think, is the takeaway for this whole event now that it's almost over?
Yes. So first and foremost, I think if the world realizes that Qualcomm is really leading 5G into reality and making sure that the ecosystem of infrastructure vendors, carriers, software vendors, hardware vendors are all aligned to launch 5G in the next few weeks or maybe short few months, and I think it's been a long journey. But we have worldwide cooperation from multiple tier one operators, as well as multiple tier one OEMs to produce multiple products. And in the next few weeks, you would see the first few of those products rolling out, and then a lot more after that in many different regions.
I think we're really close, and this is why this was like a huge deal in a way. You had a live 5G network here, and we're going to talk about that in a minute.
Correct.
But Saf, what do you think was the thing that stuck out for you the most on day one?
Well, for me personally, that 5G will be coming to my city in UK.
Right.
So I just saw it was the last city listed, which is Leicester. And I actually have major Wi-Fi problems because there's no fiber optic laid in my area.
Oh boy.
So being somebody that does a lot of social media and YouTube, uploading 4K videos is a real struggle.
Yeah, as a
and
creator.
as soon as I saw that, so that was my personal highlight, because as soon as I saw that, I tweeted EE, which is the network, and Qualcomm, like, hey, we can do something together here.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, you got the hook up. I was actually going to ask you, we love tangents on the show, don't mind us, Alex. What do you do now? Because obviously as a YouTube creator, you have to upload 4K video.
Yeah.
So what do you do? Like, do you have multiple aggregated carriers or like aggregated DSL or cable?
So right now, I actually have to go over to my parents' place who live 15 minutes away.
That's where you do your upload.
I was going to say, don't tell me to go to Starbucks or something.
Yeah, no, I have to do that, whether it's like, a cafe or something. It's just, it's, I mean, if I tell you my upload and download speed, so download speeds are on average around 7 megabits a second, and upload is around 0.7.
How do you do anything?
I know.
Analog modems are faster than
I know.
So you use your phone, your tether?
So usually I either tether on 4G, or I have to just like drive over to my parents or to a cafe or something like that, which is a real struggle. And this is why, I was very personally very interested in 5G, because that's a perfect use case. 5G would solve the problem that I'm having, and this is something that I'm sure a lot of others are having.
Oh, there's tons of people. Yeah.
Well, so I was really pleased to see my city.
You now have an excuse to see your parents regularly, though. That's good, right?
Yeah. But I mean, it's good. I'll still see them. That's not a problem. So 5G is not going to break that relationship.
If you're listening to the podcast and Saf needs help uploading, maybe some of your fans can help out.
But hopefully 5G will solve my problems.
So, I think, Alex, that Saf just talked about something that I think strikes into the hearts of a lot of customers worldwide right now. Obviously, Verizon has started rolling out fixed 5G service in 4 cities in the US.
That's right.
To replace broadband, cable, fiber, whatever, right? Or as an alternative, or as a replacement. And I think in many cases, it's the last mile for a lot of people.
Yes.
I mean, obviously we're much more interested in full mobile 5G, right? But it's all part of the equation, right? This is the thing about 5G. It's not just about mobile devices. It's also about enterprise solutions. It's about all kinds of stuff.
That's absolutely correct. So any type of customer premise equipment or CPE that could get rolled out, access points that have 5G backhaul, any type of small cell deployment to have that kind of data capability. But yeah, it's all about all of those things. Connected computers, you have, of course, your mobile handsets. So a variety of devices could benefit from that.
Cool.
From that data capability.
So that was, I mean, a lot. I don't think I heard the word 5G more in one keynote in my entire life, which granted was the whole point of it.
Correct.
But so 5G was pretty strong. We had some demos later that day.
Yes.
And, there are some stories, I have to bring it up. The Verge published a story, PC World published a story saying, this wasn't really a 5G demo. It was just, it might not have been in a lab, but it felt very much like a very controlled lab demo. And they were cranky about it. I want to get your take on this. One of the things that, you said earlier that I think I learned on this conference for myself as a pretty highly technical person was the amount of work that went into making this harmonized standard and rolling it out in a much faster speed than before. Like compared to 4G, we're going to see 5G everywhere much faster with a lot more manufacturers doing devices and stuff. So can you speak to these demos a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a grueling effort to try to have two major U.S. operators bring their infrastructure equipment to Maui and set that up in a very short period of time. And, usually you don't set up big infrastructure equipment in a hotel ballroom, but that's exactly what they did.
Right.
And then I would say at least, 100, maybe 200 engineers in total from Ericsson's equipment manufacturing and Verizon and AT&T were here, and Qualcomm, round the clock through Thanksgiving holiday, through every weekend for at least 2 weeks. Wow. And 2 weeks is a very short period of time when you're trying to set up equipment to make sure multiple demos are working. And then we had to coordinate with the OEMs that came in. So like, for example, Motorola and Samsung and Netgear and Seago and all of those companies that had engineers here as well, figuring things out. And then you had the hotel constraints where, the area would be available at some point in the day and not available in other points of the day. Maybe 2 days they were taken up because someone already had booked it. And so we had to work around all of those obstacles to try to set up a fluent 5G network with multiple demos that actually demonstrated 5G connectivity, 5G data calls, throughput capability, as well as very low latency for multiple different applications. I believe there were video calls made, there were head-mounted display demos that were there was streaming to a TV, there was downloads of multiple big files. So you also have to take into consideration that these OEMs are going to be launching in a few weeks.
Right.
So what happens is when you have multiple engineers come off and do a demo, even though from a marketing perspective is really great for them, they're tearing out some of their resources to allocate here.
Right.
And those resources could have been working on the real devices that they're going to be launching in a few weeks. So I'm very, very confident that in a few weeks, you're going to see full up 5G networks in the ground working properly. You're going to see products that are going to be production released that are going to be working fully properly. And then I would say in a very short few months, you're going to see handset releases that the consumers are going to buy and they're going to have to rely on. So it was a monumental effort. And I think the demos went quite well, even though sometimes they were restricted in terms of what they could do. And,
I think that was a challenge. I don't think anybody doubts that, the demos, I mean, it's absolutely doubt in my mind that you had something set up here that was, working. And I think there's absolutely no doubt in anybody's mind, Saf, that, this 5G is going to be real in the consumer's hands and working. I think it's more like, for us, it was kind of like we get a glimpse of it maybe before it becomes something like next year when we're all here. We'll all have 5G devices in our pocket, right?
It'll be ubiquitous. And then the other thing I was going to add is, you don't see any other chipset manufacturer besides Qualcomm that can actually do this, pulling in all of the infrastructure guys, pulling in all of the carriers, pulling in all the OEMs and actually demonstrating live 5G. There's no other chipset manufacturer that can be even close.
I think it was more of an expectation thing. I think a lot of us media were thinking we were going to be able to grab a Moto mod, 5G mod on a Z3 phone and wander around the room and like watch Netflix and go like, oh my God, look, I'm like using real 5G.
Yes.
And I think we were using real 5G, but because we weren't using, applications that are like your everyday things, it felt more controlled. And I think that's it.
Well, I'm 100% sure in a short few weeks you'll be able to do that.
All right.
And, because the Moto mod is really a 5G mod attached to a full-fledged phone.
Right.
So the applications are going to be running on the phone while
Exactly.
it's got a data connection through 5G. So I'm 100% confident.
And you know what I discovered when I found out, Saf, maybe you didn't know this, that 5G mod has a Snapdragon 855 in it.
Really?
It's not just the modem, it's a full-on computer modem solution.
That's amazing. I had no
I
idea.
did not know that either. So now you heard it on the podcast.
Yeah, that's correct.
Cool. So let's move on to the 855 because I think the 855 to me is like kind of like a magical unicorn beast. Like the 45 is already incredible. And now you're just piling on more stuff. And now it's just almost getting ridiculous what you can do. So tell us a little bit quickly, like in maybe like 10 seconds, what should listeners take away from the 855?
Yeah. So if you have a large pipe like 5G feeding data into your handset, it has to be able to be processed. It can't just sit there and go to waste. So it would be useless if we had a weaker application processor subsystem attached to a big pipe like 5G. So the 855 really is there to be able to process the amount of data that's being fed, process video, intelligently pick and choose between functions, have a great camera capability, step that up a lot. People are going to be uploading and downloading massive files. As you heard, in the next 3 years, 70% of the data traffic on all the networks is going to be video. So also think about this. Today, wherever you are with your phone, at the edge of the network, in a bad area, you still get your audio streams coming to you completely, right? There's no break or anything like that. It's going to be exactly like that with video. Video. So you're on the edge of the network, you're in a bad area, video will get to you. And that's transformative because people will collaborate around video 10 times more now that they can do that. They'll collaborate around video a lot more. And you never know, like everything visual will be coming to you versus just audio.
Yeah. For me, what struck me the most, and I'll talk about imaging with you in a minute, but what struck me the most was that the 855 is really the gateway to 5G because it is in its own an incredible 4G experience with 2 megabit per second, gigabit per second, LTE, right? Those are first.
Yes.
And on top of that, have the ability to drive the X50 modem for 5G. So it's just a powerhouse in its own right.
Yes.
It supports like 60 gigahertz Wi-Fi 6, which is Wi-Fi AX. I mean,
it's a Wi-Fi 11AY.
Oh, AY now.
So
wow.
60 gigahertz, so it's millimeter wave.
Right.
And so within a closed environment, you're going to get massive amounts of.
Right, but you also support Wi-Fi 6 is what I meant.
Yes,
too,
yes,
right? And the same chip. So like, if you're listening to this is not like a bunch of chips in one cluster.
Yes.
This is one single chip.
Yes.
And we could go on. But to me, that was like really significant. Is that in its own right, it's a really, really fantastic.
Yes, that's correct.
Device. And then on top of that, you got that gateway to the X50 and the 5G.
That's correct.
But the image processing, because I'm a bit of a photography whore myself, there I wouldn't lie. The thing that struck me the most is that the ISP now has computer vision baked in, which makes like when you were on stage and like it wasn't you, but somebody was up there saying, okay, so it can do 4K at 60 frames per second. We're like, yep, awesome, check. And then it says with live bokeh portrait mode, check. We were like, okay. And then it said HDR10 plus, and I was like, holy crap! Yes. Like, how much data is that, Saf? Like, you use a 7 Alpha 7, as your camera.
Yeah, I
one of them.
Yeah, one of them. Yeah.
And you know how beastly that thing is.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even do that.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, that's something that I'm particularly excited about. I'm always using portrait mode on all of my smartphones. And it's something that I absolutely love because it saves me having to carry around a heavy camera, and I can still get great looking shots, which, look like DSLR shots.
Yeah.
Being able to get that in video, like depth sensing at 60 frames a second.
It's insane.
It's amazing. And, I can't wait to get the first device that supports that and test it out, because that's a game changer.
Yeah.
I mean, the quality of video, if it looks like anything like the demos, then I'm really excited.
I know. The demos were pretty impressive.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think if there's so much to talk about. The graphics are improved, the CPUs, I mean, just basic processing is improved.
Yeah, so before we get off the camera subject for a second, though, those CV functions are repetitive so many times.
Yeah.
Like depth sensing and sixth off and stuff like sixth off for head-mounted displays. All those things are repetitive so many times on CV that it made sense for us not to waste the hexagon processor to process that. We just moved it into hardware. And then you get much lower power that way. You get faster processing. And then you free up that whole hexagon processor engine. I don't want to call it DSP anymore because it's really a processor.
Right, yeah.
That can do a lot more AI functions.
Correct, yeah.
Instead of wasting its time doing the CV functions.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like you're getting, not only getting speed improvements, you're getting power management. Like you're getting really better battery life out of the things that people expect and do all the time on their phones.
Yes, that's correct.
So that's I'm super stoked about that. It's interesting, as an anecdote, as a side story, I've been using a competing product, not using a Snapdragon chip as a phone a lot recently, because I think it's a really great phone, the Mate 20 Pro. Mm-hmm. And one of your colleagues asked me, why are you taking all your photos with this phone? And I said, well, 3 lenses, tele, wide, and regular really, really helps. But that could be done obviously on any Snapdragon-based product as well. In fact, the V40 from LG has that. Mm-hmm. But it was more like, and I think this is my feedback to you folks, would be, I want to see something built around the 855 that really pushes the envelope and throws everything but the kitchen sink. Because what we see from Qualcomm is every year you show us all these things your processors can do, but I feel like the OEMs are not actually going all the way there. They're never giving us all the features, and I want them to give us everything but the kitchen sink this year. I want Google or OnePlus or Samsung or somebody to come along and go you remember all the stuff they talked about in Maui? Mm. We're going to give them the whole freaking shebang. Because the Mate 20 Pro feels like that. The Mate 20 Pro, they did not hold anything back. Except for maybe the software, because I'm a bit picky.
Yeah.
But this is what I'm saying. It's I'm hoping that you guys can have at least one OEM come out with something that's just okay, every checkbox is checked.
I'm pretty positive that's going to happen, because that's the beauty of competition. Someone pushes the envelope, and then you're incentivized to do the same, and so that kind of plays off of each other.
Yeah.
And so I think Huawei pushing those solutions as far as they can is a good thing. It's a good thing for the market.
Yeah, and I think the other people are I've had some journalists say to me, well, Miriam, you got to be realistic. Apple and Huawei are very highly vertically integrated. How could a third-party OEM that uses Qualcomm chips be that? And I'm I don't agree. Qualcomm provides so much value. You don't just provide the chips, you provide the RF front end, the RF, all the power management chips, and NXP, and then on top of that you provide all these software solutions for the OEM. So that's why I'm I really want to see it happen this year.
Yeah, and you also have to realize that engineers at companies like Oppo, Vivo, Xiaomi, OnePlus, Samsung, LG, Sony, they're experienced people. For years and years they've been designing these phones, and some of them have vertically integrated sister divisions. Like Sony can go to Sony to get the sensors. They've had so much experience with content and imaging. Samsung's the same way. Mm-hmm. LG has LG Display and have electromechanical designs that are in-house. They're experienced people. And what they're going to do, they're going to see this array of features available for the 855, and we will support all of them in development of all these things. And we also push, now you see the demos that we can control in our Qualcomm reference design, we transfer all of that to them.
Exactly.
We transfer RF design, power management designs, antenna designs, thermal designs, everything goes to them. Whether they use it or not, it's there for a reference. But I'm sure they're going to push the envelope because, like I said, as competition feeds on itself.
Yeah, I mean, that's the feeling I get. The Mate 20 Pro really has really set the Android well on its head, I think, in a way, because it really shows, look, this is what could be. And, it's true that we're also at the tail end of the 845 device, wave, right?
Yes.
So the 855 device wave is coming. So I think it's an interesting time.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a great point that you mentioned. I mean, last year when we had the 845 announcement and 4K HDR was a huge thing. But I think Sony was probably one of the only OEMs that supported 4K HDR on video. Like for me personally, as somebody who uses video a lot, I was super excited about it. But the Sony phones as a whole don't match my needs.
Right.
So I'm using some other devices such as Google or the Samsung, and they don't have 4K HDR.
Right.
So I totally get your point, and I hope that all of these features that we're talking about, I mean, it'd be great to have something that takes a lot of those, if not all.
Yeah, I think we'll see it happen.
Yeah, I think so. And, our job at Qualcomm is to push and look ahead, maybe 3-4 years down the road, because we're involved in so many standard bodies, not only just on the communication side, but on every multimedia side, multiple different codecs, video standards bodies. We push limits of graphics and, there's a ton of stuff that we're involved in. So we see 3 or 4 years ahead of what's coming, and we start planning for that. And what we do is we try to have an appropriate pipe for the data that can come to you. And we work with so many different independent software vendors, and we work with so many internet companies and cloud players. We see the types of services that they want to bring to the table. And so we design appropriate systems around that. And then so we inform all of our OEMs for these things. And depending on their business outlook, they're going to go for the best product that they can. And we're there to support them 100%. But having AI push the limits of computing in a handset and bringing a fat pipe to match, if you walked away out of the first day saying, okay, they got this 5G thing licked, and they got enough processing capability to run AI, excellent video and photography, excellent gaming and graphics for all the user experiences, and then they match that together, then it's kind
of the marriage made in heaven.
Yeah.
And I think most people out there just don't know yet. It's like they're still thinking 4G. They're still thinking the data sets that we are working with today, like JPEGs, instead of HEIF, which is a container for imaging.
So much more useful. Yeah.
I think even myself as a photographer, I'm kind of cranky, my JPEG, God, I want to use my JPEG. But then I also understand that it's so much more efficient to have all that depth data stored as well, and multiple photos and multiple angles, and reconstructs things after the fact, which I think gives me way more creative options ultimately, right? Totally. Let's switch quickly gears before you have to run and talk about the Snapdragon 8CX. Yes. I'm a huge, I've been screaming off the top of my lungs for years, give me an ARM laptop, and I was so excited 2.5 years ago now at Computex, once you showed the 820 or 835, I can't remember what it was, running Windows 10, and I remember it was a little dev kit on the table with a Bluetooth keyboard and mouse, and I used it to surf the web with Edge, and I was like, this doesn't suck. This is great. And at the same time, I'm a Mac user primarily on my PC use, but I use everything, Chromebooks, Windows 10. The thing is though that Apple, with their A chips have kind of hinted that they might be making a laptop someday that runs Mac OS on ARM. And so I've also been very excited about that. So needless to say, when you announced the 850 at Computex, I was like, finally. I mean, last year's conference here, you announced, of course, and you showed the Asus device, the HP device. But to me, those were not what I was looking for. I was looking for super thin and like the Lenovo, the C630 is what I was really looking for.
That's awesome.
And so Computex comes along, and I can see the new chip, and I'm like, okay, this is happening. So now you've got that chip.
Yes.
You know, the 850 is out there. It's not going away.
Yeah.
It's doing really well. The products that are coming out with that now are like really solid. And you decided, hey, why not just crank it to 11 and give us the 8CX? Yes. I mean, this is incredible to me that you're reaching Intel levels of performance, but with much better battery life, full connectivity. Yes. And it's the first 7 nanometer chip for a laptop.
That's correct.
And just like that, in like 12 months, 18 months, whatever it's been.
Yes.
So tell us about how, I mean, obviously the vision was there all along. I figured that would happen eventually, but how did you make it happen?
So we work very tightly with Microsoft, and so they are a software partner.
Yeah.
So, you know, we know the types of services they want to go after. We know this model that they have that's going to be a new workforce with new types of work environments. And, you know, their services are all going to go over the cloud. And they need that always connected type of a device. And then what they wanted to do is to show that the PC market became a little bit stagnant.
It did.
And so therefore they wanted to crank it up. And to crank it up, you have to bring something that's significantly better in terms of user experience. It's no longer the game of, you know, I have the fastest CPU, but then it doesn't really affect my user experience. Or I have like, you know, massive graphics cards in my PC and it doesn't, you know, unless I'm a super gamer or I'm doing something very creative on that. If you're a normal user, what you want is a very light device, very thin, that lasts, you know, a long, long time for your use cases. Mm-hmm. For your use cases, you can work from anywhere.
Yeah.
Right. And it runs all the software that you need.
Right.
So that's exactly what the target and what the vision was. And so the 8CX was very collaborative with Microsoft. We knew exactly what to do in terms of connections to other devices. So our I/O was planned out. We knew exactly what type of performances we need to hit. We knew exactly what type of user experience we wanted to get out of it. Consumers were feeding back. So Microsoft gets giant size feedback from their consumers all the time. And so we collaborated with them, we worked with them, and we came up with a solution that would be perfect for a world of thin, portable, always connected, always on, long battery life with all sorts of software and backwards compatibility running on it. And they helped quite a bit to try to get this rolling. And I think the OEMs, so if you take a look at the mobile OEMs, they're dying to expand their premium tier solutions. Right? They want to expand their premium tiers. It's like a market ready to go into, and they have the experience with connectivity to make that happen. And then the PC OEMs are looking for something different as well. They want to have this type of capability go into an enterprise. They want to make sure the enterprise users are free to go anywhere they want. Microsoft's pushing that, so they might as well comply with that as well. So it was like a perfect setting.
And I mean, let's not forget also you have this incredible mobile experience on the phone side.
Yes.
And you, in a way, scaled that up for the PC.
That's right.
So, I mean, you know, you had a foundation that was really solid with lots of fine tuning and experience for years.
That's right.
Are you into this? Like, I know you primarily use a laptop to edit video, I presume these days, and that's a pretty heavy duty thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, assuming, say, that I use Final Cut or Premiere, I don't know.
I'm a Premiere user.
You're Premiere, so you could potentially use a Windows 10.
Yeah.
So what if there was a ARM64 optimized version of Premiere that used all the codec stuff for rendering that was baked into the 8CX? Would you look at using something like that?
Totally. With like right now, when I try to edit on my laptop, you know, I will not get much in terms of battery life. It will. I will have to connect onto power. I was just in LA with David Kogan. We were out in a cafe, and I forgot my charger. I literally must have edited for just over an hour, and my battery was already starting to die. So I'd be really excited to test out some video editing and seeing how that performs for me. If I'm on a plane, for example, I can't charge my laptop on a plane because the power output is not high enough.
Are you using a Razer?
I'm using XPS 15.
Oh yeah, that's pretty beefy.
Yeah. So it just won't charge my laptop. So then editing on the plane, especially because I travel a lot and the long distance, like just sitting on the plane, I'd rather do editing, but I can't because my battery will not last as long. So I'd be really excited to test out.
Maybe you guys should talk to Adobe and see if we get SuperSaf, a custom version of Premiere that you can try out on one of those.
Yeah, and also both Qualcomm and Microsoft have been working with a lot of the software vendors to make sure their software runs on a 64-bit version of ARM. And I think over time what you'll see is many more just coming on and making that happen.
I still think that it's interesting because as tech journalists, YouTube creators, and this whole little world that all of us live in, that are media in this event, we have these weird kind of niche special needs. But if you look at them and you fulfill these niche needs, they end up getting really great mainstream traction, is what I feel.
Yeah.
It's like, because when this came out, I have a 12-inch MacBook. I'm pointing at it right now for those of you who can't see me. It's an old one. And at the time, it was a great use case for me because I don't edit video on this, but for everything else, it still gives me full computing, and I can still open a shell and run some Unix stuff if I want to. But it's super thin, super light, and it's not always connected, but it's pretty much always on. And the connected part, I just use a hotspot, and it's fine, right? Thankfully, I get Qualcomm devices out the kazoo in my pockets. But I think we're kind of the perfect test bed because we need to be on the web for publishing, but we also need to do video editing, which is a little heavier than, it's not video gaming like, super 500 frame per second, 4K video, but we need some stuff that is a little more heavy duty than just surfing the web and the enterprise would use. So it's kind of, I think it's interesting to see how that's going to go.
Well, maybe we can give you guys a device.
Yeah, I've actually talked to Bernie about getting a C630 because that's the one thing I don't have right now. I think that's the one that's most appealing. Do you like the Samsung maybe instead?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to. I've not actually tested one out properly, but I'd love to maybe next time I'm coming to California. It's like, hey, I'm going to charge this up and I'm going to use it on my flight all the way and have a proper use case.
LT all your way through the West Coast.
And then that'll be, and then we'll see how much battery life there is. That'll be the ultimate test.
There's no difference in power if you have your LTE on constantly or you have your Wi-Fi on constantly.
Right.
Wow, that's amazing.
No difference.
Well, I think this is a good time for us to say goodbye to Alex. I know you've got other things to do. And
thank you.
Thanks for being on the show.
Inviting me.
It was really awesome.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, thanks.
It's great to meet you. I'll see you back at the gym.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was fun.
That was.
What do you think? To me, we didn't talk about one thing that I think was kind of a big deal on the 855 day, which was the whole OnePlus stuff.
Yes.
Right? So, I'm sure you've had a few OnePlus 6Ts now. There's 2 or 3 different colors.
Yeah, I've got the main one, right? I've got the black.
They didn't send you a purple one yet?
They didn't.
That's so weird.
Yeah, it's weird.
Eric, if you're listening, I know you are.
The purple is so much easier to film as well, rather than a black. It's obviously a lot more striking as well, so it'd be nice. It would have been nice to have had that, but still a great device overall.
But the news is that it sounds like, remember last year, 845 Samsung was the first to get it.
Yeah.
Because they are they manufacture it. They're basically the fab, the chip maker, and 7 nanometer is going to be a big deal here. So I'm sure I'm not sure if they explicitly stated Samsung's the manufacturer, but I think it's going to be Samsung. Surprisingly, OnePlus is getting the first batch.
Yeah, well,
what's your take on that?
So they said it's going to be the first device of 2019. Yeah, but then they amended that, right? They have to say that it's going to be one of the first.
Okay, I didn't hear the amendment.
Okay, so this is the thing, because everyone was going all over online saying they're going to be the first, and then apparently that was amended that they actually meant it was one of the first. So
yeah, I was kind of surprised, because the way it was translated by the interpreter was a little weird.
Yeah.
Because Pete Lau, the CEO of OnePlus, was on stage and he did the presentation in Chinese, and the slide said the first, but then the translation said one of the first. Yeah. And I was like, which one is it? So, look, the reality is OnePlus doesn't build that many phones. So volume-wise, it actually would make sense for them to grab a chunk of the first production.
Yeah.
And so that they can be first. And
but the release cycle of OnePlus devices, so it's usually summertime, isn't it? the OnePlus 6.
It's like May-ish, April-ish.
Yeah, so I mean, if they were to stick to that cycle, I mean, I think Samsung will probably come in earlier
before that. Yeah,
but I mean, again, the OnePlus may
they may be early this year. You know,
yeah,
you never know because it's. I think they've really. I mean, this year they've really shown that they're really maturing rapidly this year, right? I mean, wow,
definitely.
And if we had a conversation, if you go back in time and talk to ourselves right now in January, February, and say OnePlus is in T-Mobile stores in the US and is making a 5G phone next year with EE in the UK and is coming out with the first Snapdragon 855 phone, or one of the first, we'd be like, nah, that's a little much. But now it's real. So that's the other thing I just want to quickly drop. We're doing 2 items in one shot. So first, one of the first 855 phones, and there is going to be the first 5G, definitely one of the first 5G phones in Europe on EE.
Yep.
And so that's really a big deal. That means that OnePlus is really committed to 5G. I mean, I didn't talk to Pete, but I talked to Eric, and he said, this is a big deal. We spend a lot of time and energy on making sure we're ready for 5G. And I said, and I said to him, well, that makes sense, because if you think about it, early adopter, tech-savvy folk are the people who buy, and values and smart people are the ones who buy OnePlus devices. So 5G is going to make phones expensive. Pete said it would be $200 to $300 more than normal. So probably $1,000 for a phone from OnePlus with 5G, which means the rest of the phones for 5G are going to be like $1,200, $1,300.
Yeah,
right?
that's the way things are going right now.
Oh my God! But the point is that those same people are going to want 5G early, and they're going to want it at a price that's hopefully as reasonable as possible. So I think OnePlus is a good candidate.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the current price of OnePlus, I mean, so in the UK, it's still starting at £500. So even if you were to increase that by a few hundred, it still would be competitive compared to other devices that are now starting at, in the UK anyway, £800, £900.
Right.
So, I mean, if we look at the Mate 20 Pro, which I noticed we are both using, and we both have the same.
I know, it's so weird.
Yeah.
Freaky.
Yeah. So, even with the price increase, I still think it will be somewhat competitive.
I think so too. And I mean, it sounds like you're an E customer.
I am not yet, but I mean, if they can bring me 5G, then
I'm
happy to jump ship anytime.
You heard it here first, people.
Yeah.
This is, I kind of feel like, I'm not sure we're going to get a OnePlus with 5G support for US carriers until later. And I'm kind of bummed now. I want to be in the UK for the EE stuff. Yeah. That's another big piece of the story, is that we are factually being told that 8055 and then eventually a 5G 855 based device. So, and I've heard, this is unconfirmed, but I heard rumors that this might not be we're not talking about OnePlus 7 and then OnePlus 7T with 5G later. We're talking about parallel lines of devices here. So the 7 will be probably one of the first 855 devices with 4G. Yeah. And then there'll be some other phone at some point, and maybe branded in a different numbering scheme or something. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, that would be quite interesting. I mean, it could be like a special edition which has 5G. Who knows? We'll see.
Speaking of 5G hardware, so Samsung, among all the news at this conference, announced that they're going to be making a 5G phone for AT&T. No surprises there, but this would be a millimeter wave phone for the US. But then the next day, not here, but on some other location somewhere, or maybe through a press release, I can't remember, they announced that AT&T is getting a second Samsung 5G phone next year, later on, that also supports sub-6 in addition to millimeter wave.
All right.
So it's like the Osborne effect, back in the 70s or 80s when they announced the next computer before they shipped the first one, and then went bankrupt because everybody wanted to buy the second one. I mean, of course, Samsung's not going to go bankrupt on that.
No.
But it's kind of feels like, why would you do that? Why wouldn't you let people buy the first one
and then release?
I suppose it depends on which market you're in, because if you have millimeter wave in your market, you'll want sub-6 first, right? So But that's another piece of news. I'll link to all these news items in the show notes. So here's something that I want to get your feel for, because I'm not a big fan of Allo and Duo.
Okay.
And one of the news items yesterday was that Google plans to kill Allo.
Yeah. So here's the thing.
Are you mad?
So I don't actually use it because so in the UK everybody uses WhatsApp.
Yes, of course.
Everybody uses WhatsApp, and this is something that I actually find surprising whenever I come to the States, right? Is because I'm like WhatsApp, and they're like,
Very
oh,
few
there's very few people who use WhatsApp.
I use it, but
yeah, but now I've kind of like got all my friends onto WhatsApp so that we can communicate. But yeah, I mean, I personally not really use that much, to be honest, because WhatsApp, because all of my friends and family generally are on there.
Yeah,
that's what I use mainly. So I mean, for me, it wasn't crazy news. Like it was just like, okay, I don't use it anyway.
No, but it's interesting because Google really seems to be struggling to introduce these various messaging apps, and I have never been a fan of these two apps. In fact, Duo is the only one that comes pre-installed on a lot of Android phones, and I disable it pretty much by default because I don't need it. I don't want it. I mean, with my Asian friends, I'm on WeChat.
Yep.
With my European friends, I'm on WhatsApp. With my American friends, I'm on Facebook Messenger or Instagram Messenger, or sometimes, God forbid, text messaging.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's where I'm at. You know?
Same.
And it's like, but it's interesting because it's like, oh God, Google, you poor guys, you can't get a break. Everything you come up with just gets shut down in flames. And I think it probably goes along with them shutting down Hangouts as well, because I think it used a lot of shared technologies in the back end. Yeah. So
it's funny because when we got here, one of the guys, Enabong from Board at Work, was we had like a Facebook group chat, and he was speaking to somebody about Hangouts, and I was like, you still use Hangouts? Like, who uses Hangouts in 2018? Like, I've not used it.
I haven't used it in a while. It really is. I used for a little while there. U.S. journalists would use them. I use it as a group for their publication. Mm-hmm. You know, like they would use Slack today, for example. Mostly for text, like for text-based messaging as a group feature, but. That's kind of, I don't know of anybody who's contacted me on Hangouts at all in such a long time. Like I use Skype a lot still, for better or for worse, for a lot of the podcasts that I've done remotely. Like we're in the same room today, so it's easier. That's fine. But that just seems to work because I don't know. I'm willing to do other stuff, but Skype can run on the same computer that's recording the audio and all that. So but yeah, interesting little tidbit there. And speaking of weird tidbits, a little closer to home for you. Yeah. Russia, Yandex in Russia has launched their own Android phone. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did see that briefly. Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Well, from the specs, it looks pretty decent for the price.
It's very, Snapdragon 630. Pretty low, like mid range-ish. I mean, it doesn't look bad. It doesn't. But it's interesting because obviously both you and I have no perspective on that universe of Yandex and using Yandex and Alice, their voice assistant. I didn't even know Yandex had a voice assistant.
No, I didn't know. This is the thing. I mean,
it's like Baidu or something. It's like a different experience.
Yeah, it's a very, very different experience over there.
But it's cool. Yeah. Like, I mean, I'm always excited when I see a new phone that's completely weird like that too, because it's like, I know it's not going to be something I'm going to use every day or get into, but I like to try it out, Yeah. Because it's like variety is the spice of life kind of thing.
It's something different.
Speaking of, so have there been any phones that have kind of crossed your desk or your, studio that have been like, oh, this was completely unexpected. That was kind of like, I'm kind of digging it, but nobody else is, or I'm digging it, but I didn't think I would dig it.
Yeah, so the thing is with me personally, I generally concentrate on the flagships.
Of course, so do I. Yeah. There's so many.
And this year has been so crazy, especially in October. So there's devices which, for instance, the LG V40 was something that I wanted to spend some more time with because it was one of the first with the 3 cameras.
I know.
And I just didn't get enough time.
Neither did I. And it's just LG bad timing. Why were you the first? And then we were bombarded with more important news of all these things.
Exactly. And obviously we have to prioritize. And like for me as well, I need to concentrate on more of what the audience wants to see. And the demand for other devices such as the Mate 20 Pro, which again has 3 cameras, was much higher. And that's why I had to kind of put my concentration on that.
I also think that if you look at them side by side, I mean, I'm a huge fan of LG. I've been so supportive of them.
Yeah.
But because I've been a big fan of the V series for multimedia creation. I mean,
Yeah.
manual video mode on that thing is still unbeat by anyone
Yeah,
else.
very much so.
But at the same time, like the Mate 20 Pro is such a masterful device.
It
That
is.
it's like you put them side by side and you're like, sorry LG, but
No, here's the
little-
thing, because I was actually quite I'm surprised coming here to see so many creators running the Mate 20 Pro like as their primary device.
That I did all my content on Mate 20 Pro this week.
Yeah, and it's just amazing. Like for me, it's the battery life. Like I use so many of the devices, and for me, the battery life on this is great. I've got dual SIMs in here because I'm traveling, so it's working out on there. The camera is really good. I think cameras still can be improved. I still prefer the Pixel and the iPhone for pictures and video when it comes to regular photos. But of course, because of the variety that you have on here with the zoom, how much zoom. I saw you were taking pictures of the presentation.
Yeah, I did live blog all 3 days, and the reason I use the Mate 20 Pro is like the tele and the wide and then regular, and then changing the angle basically.
Yeah, it just gives you so many options. So I think as an all round device, it is very, very good, which is the reason why so many people are using it, especially like creators. I can like count a good few that are using the Mate 20 Pro as their primary device.
Absolutely. And I use my Pixel 3 XL as my main phone with my main SIM.
Yeah.
And I use that for video. A lot of my video is done on the Pixel. And personal photography, that is when I don't need a tele or something, I use the Pixel. But the Mate, I always have with me because it's just like so versatile.
Yeah.
And not so much for video, but for photos. Wow, I can have so much creative fun with photos.
Yeah, totally. I think they've done a great job with it.
It's really, really strong. Speaking of fun phones, Nokia announced an 8.1 device, which will replace the 7 Plus. Have you played with any of their phones?
So I have played with a few of their phones, but once again, because
They're not flagships.
because they're not flagships, like this is something that a lot of my audience, because I have quite an international audience,
Yes.
some of the audience will be like, can you check out this phone? And I'd say like, I'd love to check it out, but I only have so much time in terms of playing around with the phone. So what I tend to do is, because of that reason, I tend to concentrate on the upper tier flagships because I know that's what's going to work with me, for me. So for the Nokia ones, I've had brief time playing around with them, but not in depth.
Yeah, so this is a new one. I was excited to see that. I played with the 7.1 for a week. Like in the middle of Phone Apocalypse Techtober.
Yeah.
I didn't like cover it very extensively, other than a few tweets here and there and an unboxing video. But I was just, I'm a long-time Nokia fan. This whole HMD revival got me very excited.
Yeah.
But like you, I need to focus on the big ones, the big guns. So I'm not really spending much time. But I have to say, for a mid-range phone, it was a delightful experience to use that 7.1 for a few days. I was pretty impressed. So the 8.1, I'm hoping, is a step further up from there. So
definitely, I mean, they Nokia make great devices overall, and I think in that mid-range market, they are quite popular from what I hear from all my followers saying, "Hey, you need to check this one out." Hopefully. If things get quieter, if they ever do, then I'll have a chance to.
Well, what about that Nokia 9 everybody's been kind of rumored with the penta camera setup, like the star-shaped camera thing? If that comes out, if that turns out to be real and it's a flagship 855 base phone,
then
are you in?
Definitely,
Yeah, did you hear that?
So,
HMD? All right, folks, like we want that flagship. I mean, as much as we love you making mid-range phones because that's where the money is right now. Right?
Did they have an event in Dubai recently?
I don't know, honestly.
So I think there was because I saw when I was on my way here, I have this thing on my Instagram stories that kind of like get my audience to guess where am I going now, right?
That's awesome.
So then you'll get all of because there's different events going on, and then a lot of people are saying like Dubai for the Nokia event, and I'm like thinking. They've got an event at Dubai.
It might have been the 8.1 to be honest.
Yeah, it could have been the 8.1. I'm not 100% sure, but I was like, hey Nokia, if you invite me for an event in Dubai, I'm there.
Absolutely.
I am there.
Nokia before when it was still Microsoft. In fact, before it got acquired by Microsoft, just before it became absorbed by Microsoft. it had their last Nokia World in Abu Dhabi, and I was there, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my God. They went all out because they knew, like, they're like, let's blow the budget.
Let's go.
It was really good time.
Yeah.
Two more little things I'm curious about. Have you, in your travels here in the US, used Google Fi, or even abroad, used Google Fi?
So Google Fi is something that I've thought about a lot, but when it comes to, so most of the places I go, so now currently anyway, the great thing about traveling in Europe is I can use my home SIM as I would, so I don't actually have to do anything. Now, what I've actually started doing when I come to the US is just getting an unlimited data SIM, and that's because I use a lot of data.
Of course.
Now, I believe on Google Fi, correct me if I'm wrong, it's like $10.
Yeah, it's $10 per, I can't remember. It's like the $10 per gigabyte, I think.
Yeah, I think it's somewhere around there.
And for me, what I like about it is that I have one, but I never use it domestically.
Okay.
You can pause service for up to 3 months and you pay nothing.
Yeah.
And so, it auto re-enables itself after 3 months, but it notifies you. So you can literally go back in the app and turn it off again for 3 months.
Okay.
So it's been on for 10 seconds. And if the SIM is in no device, you're paying nothing because it's not even registering. So that's how I deal with it. It's not, I'll store it off device and I keep it somewhere and I travel with it. And when I go to my destination, I turn it on remotely. And all of a sudden I have unlimited speed and roaming. It's still $10 per gigabyte, but no restrictions on performance of roaming and tons of roaming agreements with tons of other carriers, which is really great. And I mean, my T-Mobile US SIM has free roaming abroad, but they cap the speed. So it's like 3G speeds. But it's still free and unlimited, which is nice. But if you want to do what we're doing, upload video or whatever, that's where so I look at it and go, is the local SIM cheaper than me using my Fi SIM? And if it is, then I buy the local SIM. But oftentimes I find myself, especially in Europe, for like big destinations like London or France, Germany, where the price of mobile is more expensive than say Croatia or Ukraine. I went to Ukraine, it was unreal. Saf, I paid £2 for unlimited data for a week or something, and I was just like, how can you make any money on this? And it was LTE.
It's crazy because I was speaking to some of the other journalists that are here in Hawaii for the Snapdragon Summit from India, and they were telling me about the India data plans and SIMs. So we're talking, I think they were saying like maybe $6 or $7 a month.
Wow.
1 gigabyte a day.
Wow.
So a gig a day for that amount.
I mean, it's
like,
insane,
that's crazy.
right?
And they were actually, it was funny because he was saying that nobody has broadband. Nobody.
Of course.
Because data systems are so cheap. So they'll have a smart TV, which will not be connected onto a broadband network. It'll be connected to a phone that's hotspotting. So,
oh my God.
So they'll be like, I was like, wow, seriously, it's amazing to hear. But yeah, I mean, this is the thing. So when I'm usually come to the US, so I just picked up an unlimited T-Mobile SIM card, which wasn't very expensive, and I've got a connection while I'm here. So yeah, I mean, I haven't used it myself personally, Google Fi, but I mean, it's interesting.
So the reason I bring it up is because last week they announced that it's no longer a Project Fi, so no longer a hobby for Google. As you know, their hobbies are pretty expensive.
Of course.
But this is now real.
Yep.
And more importantly, it's going to be available on iPhones. And it's going to support pretty much any phone. With a caveat that if you want the proper auto switching between networks, because that's one of the features, if you use it domestically in the US, it benefits from Sprint and T-Mobile's network, whichever's got the best signal at the time. And so the Pixel and some Moto phones and some LG phones auto switch, which is really kind of cool.
Very cool.
And so that's basically a week-old news item that didn't make it in last week's podcast. So I just wanted to bring it up. Along the same lines, since we're speaking of Sprint and we spoke of 5G earlier, this does not matter to you, Saf, in any way. But Sprint and HTC, and maybe it does matter because it's HTC, and poor HTC, we never talk about them anymore, are making a hotspot device, 5G hotspot device for Sprint. This is HTC. So maybe HTC, that's weird. Like I did not expect them to make a hotspot for Sprint. But there it is. It was announced a week ago.
Yeah.
I mean,
HTC. Yeah, I mean, again, like my first Android device was an HTC Desire, and I absolutely loved it. And then, like since then, I think HTC have unfortunately just kind of gone in the background. Not really stood out from the crowd.
Did you play with the U12 Plus? That was technically a flagship.
So here's the thing with HTC, I reached out to them many times to, actually get some hands-on time or maybe get a review device. Not really had anything, unfortunately.
How? Seriously?
Yeah.
Like we're talking about SuperSaf here.
No, but this is the thing. I'm like this is something that I say all the time is the companies who need coverage the most from press and YouTubers and content creators, they seem to be the ones that are providing it. Like it's
true.
It's like,
it's
hey,
absolutely true.
Bring people over. Let's get the word out about our device. I didn't get a chance to use it, and then straight away we had so many of the devices which took priority. So yeah.
So tell me, what are the phones you brought with you and are on your person today at this conference?
Okay, so I did bring quite a few. So the Mate 20 Pro has been my primary device because of the dual SIM cards. But I also had the iPhone XS Max, which I really like for the cameras, and the Pixel. As well as that, I have two sort of backup devices: the Note 9, which was my primary before I came here, and also the OnePlus 60. So
look at you.
I've got a few options.
Well, I brought the OnePlus 6T. I brought a ROG phone from Asus.
Oh, yeah.
I brought a Mate 20 Pro, and I brought a Pixel 3 XL. Yeah. I also have a Poco phone F1. I finally got one. I'm late to the party. Yeah. But after pestering Xiaomi US, which is not a US product, so it's a little hard for them to justify. Yeah. But after prodding and poking for a while, they finally sent me one. And I haven't really done much with it, but I think that I'm staying a few extra days. So I'm going to probably swap SIMs and try it out.
Seems pretty impressive. I'm not sure if you saw the blind camera test that Marquez Brownlee did.
I did not.
Okay, well, I don't want to spoil anything, but
it turns out it's okay then.
Well, it turns out that it reached the finals in the camera test.
Oh wow!
Which was
pretty. And it doesn't even have OIS, which is
it doesn't. But it was quite interesting because the discussion in the video is that what people perceive as a better image sometimes can be not necessarily the better image if you kind of go into detail. If you're somebody like us who goes into and looks at, sharpness, detail, but perceptually on Twitter or on social media, potentially a brighter image might look like the better one, which it might not be. But it was a very interesting test. I definitely recommend.
I'll have to check it out. Yeah. The other thing that I want to say, since we just talked about the ROG phone, and I've only really had it in my pocket for about a few days since I activated just before I flew over, is the camera is very disappointing. I mean, it's not horrible. It's hard to make a bad camera these days, especially with the Snapdragon 845 driving in the show. Yeah. But it's rough. And I'm like, everything else, so the battery life is incredible. The display, that 90 hertz refresh rate, you can really feel that. I mean, it's not as good as Razer, but it's a solidly, beautifully made phone and tons of RAM with all the goodness that comes from that. So, it's not a bad phone, but I really feel like, come on, how could you have let yourself down on that camera? Yeah. Especially when you're kind of gearing it to be a gaming phone that's also just a general speaking of flagship that can do anything. Yeah. It's hard to justify when you put the Poco phone near it, right? Yeah. And you're like, okay, well.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, the ROG phone, I actually really like the display, the 90 Hz, because it's OLED. I remember comparing it to the Razer Phone 1 at the time, which was the only thing to compare when I initially saw it. Yeah. And I wasn't a huge fan of the Razer Phone 1 display because just brightness wise.
It was so dim.
I loved the 120 Hz refresh rate, but it was such a dim display. But then when I saw the OLED at 90 Hz, I was like, I'd much rather have this because I'm a big fan of OLED displays.
It does get pretty bright too.
Yeah, and it's just overall the way the phone looks.
It's good.
It's like, this is a gaming phone. It has been designed ground up as a gaming phone. The fact that it's got USB-C
on the edge.
I'm not sure if Andrew Edwards, my friend, I'm not sure who did that, but that was hilarious.
So in case you're wondering what we're talking about, I'll link to the tweet. Somebody at Android Police tweeted a photo and actually wrote a story of if you plug the bottom port USB-C into the side port of the ROG phone, it thinks it's charging.
Yeah.
Which means it's like kind of perpetual motion, but it's not. Obviously, you're just wasting energy and heat in the cable. But it's kind of funny. I'll link to the tweet.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I'm trying to remember so the thing about I keep saying ROG. I know it's wrong. It's ROG. I got so much hell on social media for saying that. Now I'm sticking with it just to antagonize them all. No, I'm just I keep forgetting. It's just easier for me to say ROG. But I know it's Republic of Gamers, ROG phone.
Yeah. I mean, it's a promising device. I hope that for the next one they can concentrate a little bit more on the cameras, because gamers also like to take pictures.
Absolutely. And who doesn't like to take pictures?
Yeah.
Cool. So what is the next phone you're looking the most forward to?
The next phone, I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to some of these 5G enabled phones. I mean, the Galaxy S, because it's going to be the 10th year anniversary. So from the rumors, we're hearing that they're going to potentially have three or maybe even 4 phones.
Well, I think the way I'm thinking of it is we're going to get a mainstream Galaxy S10 LT. It's going to be full screen, probably with a hole punch through for the camera. And then we're going to get a 5G version of that, which will not be full screen because it needs to have a millimeter wave antenna in the front somewhere. So they can only put that either in the top or bottom bezel. And we're going to get a 10th anniversary version of one of these two that might have some custom design to it. And it's going to have everything but the kitchen sink. It's going to be like the Note 10 before the Note 10 in many ways. And then we're going to get the folding phone, the Galaxy F.
So it's going to be very exciting, I think, especially on the Samsung side. What is your opinion on the punch hole?
I'm digging it. Actually, we have a Huawei briefing next week in San Francisco, and I know it's not about the Nova 4, which is the phone that's been rumored to beat Samsung to the punch, pardon the pun, for the punch-out front camera hole thing. It's not. I don't think this briefing is about the Nova 4 because it's not a US market product. It's probably about something else. But I'm kind of hoping somehow that they will have a Nova 4 there to show us because I kind of dig it. I think it's a very elegant solution. And you think I think from a technical perspective, it's the next step will be the camera be behind an OLED, and the part where the camera goes black for the moment of the photo taking. And they have a very wide aperture, like f4 1.5 or something, to gather more light, and very large pixels to gather more light. Because the screen will act like an ND filter. And so I think that's what we're going to see next. So like in a year.
I mean, there's been some interesting solutions. I mean, with something like the Find X and the Vivo Next. What I think was quite interesting, I think it was one of the Vivo phones which had a screen on the back.
That's right. Dual screen, and they solved that problem easily by not even having a front camera.
So it's just like you can go bezel-less, and then you can use, because the rear-facing camera is
going to be better.
Always going to be better. So then it's like, hey, you don't need to use a front-facing camera at all. You just use the display at the back to frame yourself, and you can take selfies.
Are you excited about this kind of proliferation of variants on form factor that we're seeing to kind of give us a full screen experience?
I mean, generally speaking, I've been primarily using the Note 9 for, I'd say, the most part of this year. And before that, I was also using the S9 Plus. I don't mind a very small top and bottom bezel.
It's not bad.
It's not something that affects me that much. I'd prefer that to a notch. Again, I'm not hugely against a notch either. It's something that I can get used to. One of the things that I don't like about the Mate 20 Pro, for example, is that the notch actually takes some space on the left and right hand side. So I can't actually see, so right now, I have a Twitter notification, but the icon doesn't come up.
There's
because
nothing.
There's not enough space for the icons, because the notch is taking that much space along the top. So I'd rather not have that and just have a strip, which, so I'm not hugely bothered by the notch, but it's really interesting to see all of these, and just really cool solutions that these manufacturers are.
I think it's fun. I think we needed something less boring than just a slab of glass. And so adding some moving parts, dual displays, things that stick out, things that slide. I think it's cool.
Innovation is always welcome, of course, and it's always for us, especially seeing some of these solutions, is really exciting.
Absolutely. Really cool. Well, listen, we should wrap it up. I think everybody knows where to find you, but please tell everyone who doesn't know who you are, somehow doesn't follow you, where on social media and on the internet they can find you.
So I'm SuperSaf everywhere, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I was trying to figure out the order to put that. So it's usually SuperSaf on everywhere. I cover mostly just general tech, but a lot of smartphones, just because that's what people are very interested in. And yeah, you can check me out on those channels.
Fantastic. Go check it out. I will link to your Twitter and hopefully people can go from there.
Of course.
And you know where to find me. I'm at Tankgirl on Twitter and Instagram. That's TNKGRL, like the comic book character from Australia, Tankgirl, but without the vowels. That's how I got the handle. Okay, and cool. So, and at the time it was the 90s too. So somebody stole it. I was like, I'll drop the vowels. I was way ahead of my time dropping vowels. Yeah. But hey, cool. You can find me there. You know, the podcast is at mobiletechpodcast.com. Also available on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Overcast, Stitcher, Slacker, TuneIn Radio. Maybe someday we'll have SoundCloud. I'm working on YouTube. By the way, I promised you all that I would put the podcast on YouTube at some point. But I haven't done that yet. It's still in the works. I still need to figure out how that's going to be because I have no visuals to go with it. But stay tuned for that. And then the other thing is the YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/Miriam Jouar. My full name spelled out, Miriam with a Y. Go there. It's got videos that complement the podcast, like unboxings, hands-on videos. Like you'll see a hands-on video with the Snapdragon 855 dev kit, or the reference design, as they call it. Pretty cool stuff. So, you know, that's basically it about me. I want to take a second to thank our sponsor, Audible. Audible.com is the place to go for audiobooks. If you like to listen to books instead of reading them, or for some reason have to listen to them instead of reading them, go subscribe to Audible. There's a link in the show notes that will support the podcast if you click through. audibletrial.com/mobiletech. That's audibletrial.com/mobiletech. If you're not already a subscriber and you want to join, please click on that link and you'll support the podcast. And we'll be back for more. Saf, thanks for being on. Really awesome.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Absolutely. We'll have you on again sometime soon. And stay tuned for another show next week, folks. Cheers, everybody.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.